So we've been talking a little bit about embracing the uncomfortable, and today we're going to just do a little bit of a deeper dive into it. So I want you to think back. Have you noticed how your pain seems to flare at the most inconvenient times? Right before maybe difficult conversation, when you are feeling overwhelmed by everything on your plate, or during a moments of vulnerability or conflict. And if you have, just put an emoji down in the comments or even raise the hand if you're listening to the session. I want to say this is not a coincidence. Your brain has learned to treat certain life situations like as dangerous, and it responds to the psychological threats the same way it would respond to a physical danger with pain signals. So let me share a scenario that might sound familiar to you. Your mother-in-law is making critical comment about your housekeeping or your mom. Anybody could, but somebody probably close to you. And your back immediately starts aching. Your partner wants to have a serious talk, and you wake up the next morning with a pounding headache. Or you have three deadlines at work, and your daughter has a school event, and your neck pain flares up as you try to manage it all. So these three scenarios have something in common. They activate your brain's danger detection system, even though there's no physical threat present. So over the years, I've noticed that certain situations consistently trigger pain flares in the women I work with. So these aren't, traumatic events. They're everyday experiences that your brain has learned to perceive as dangerous. So I'll categorize them in like four buckets. Conflict and confrontation. So maybe you grew up in a home that, conflict made chaos, or well, being difficult led to rejection. And now any disagreement, even a minor one, sends your nervous system into a high alert. And what happened is your brain has learned conflict means danger. The second bucket is being overwhelmed or, feeling out of control. So perhaps you've learned early that you needed to be, perfect, manage everyone's emotions, or keep everything running smoothly to be safe. So now when life feels chaotic or unpredictable, your danger signals activate. And your brain have learned that chaos means danger, that unpredictability means danger. Another bucket is vulnerability and intimacy. So maybe you've experienced rejection when you showed your true colors, true feelings, sorry, not colors, feelings, or learned that your needs were too much for others. So now moments of emotional closeness or asking for help feel threatening. And your brain have learned that that vulnerability means danger. And the last bucket is disappointing others. So perhaps you have learned that love was conditional or being good or, that others' happiness was your responsibility. Your brain might interpret any potential disappointment as a threat to safety. And your brain have learned letting others down means danger. So I want to share, as I often do this time, a little bit of my own trigger discovery story. Um, and I never forget when I realized that my back pain had a pattern and, and seems to flare when I had, have to have those difficult conversations with my boss, with my partner, even returning, items to the store. And at first I thought it was just bad timing. But when I started paying attention and noticed my pain would often start ramping up hours before those interaction, when I was thinking, just about them. So my brain have learned that conflict was dangerous. Um, Growing up after disagreements often led to days of tension in our house. So it was my brain was trying to protect me by creating pain that would give me an excuse to avoid those situations. Um, brain is amazing that way. So once I understood that, and once I understood the pattern, I was, able to start working with it differently. So when anxiety arises in a response to those psychological triggers, our natural instinct is always to avoid or to escape. We want to avoid the conflict. We people please. We agree when we want to say no. We shut down our opinions. We try to avoid chaos. We over control, micromanage. We all exhaust ourselves trying to perfect everything. We avoid vulnerability. We pull back from the relationships. We hide our struggles and we refuse help. And we avoid disappointing others. We say yes to everything and we never prioritize our own needs. And while this avoidance temporarily reduces anxiety, it actually strengthens our brain's belief that these situations are dangerous. So we really want to try a different approach in, leaning in. And instead of running from that anxiety that those situations create, what if we could stay present with it? What if, we use the same somatic tracking skills we've been practicing to embrace the discomfort? And when the conflict arises, instead of immediately people please, I'd like you to pause and notice. I feel anxiety in my chest about this disagreement. I'm going to breathe with this feeling and stay present while I express my perspective. And when things feels chaotic, as a mom, I'm sure many of you can relate, instead of frantically trying to control everything, pause and notice. I feel overwhelmed and anxious. I'm going to feel with anxiety in my body while I decide what actually needs my attention right now. And well, when vulnerability feels scary, instead of pulling back or putting up a brave face, pause and notice. I feel nervous about sharing this. I'm going to stay present with this while I let someone else see the real me. So the practice for this lesson is really identify your psychological triggers. So what situations consistently make you anxious? When does your pain tend to flare in relation to stress? What do you find yourself avoiding or over controlling? Then I'd like you to practice micro exposure. Start with a very small versions of your triggers. If conflict is hard, practice expressing a little bit um, as you can, right? Just like a um, minor preference. Try a little bit. We want to work within the nervous system, within what feels comfortable within your nervous system. So we don't, we shouldn't go for like a big conflict, big thing, because that may cause more issues. We want to make very gradual, almost like 1% changes. And then if vulnerability feels scary, share a one struggle with a safe person. And then if chaos feels overwhelming, deliberately leave one small thing unfinished. And this is one of my favorites because that's the one I practice the more. Use somatic tracking with psychological stress. So when you notice this anxiety arising around this trigger, pause, feel where that anxiety lives in your body. Breathe with it instead of trying to escape it. And remind yourself that what you're feeling is anxiety and you're actually safe. And then, as I mentioned, start small and build gradually. You don't need to tackle your biggest fears right away. Begin with situations that create mild anxiety, not a panic. And celebrate staying present with discomfort, even for 30 seconds. What I want you to remember is you don't have to be at the mercy of psychological triggers, every time you stay present with anxiety instead of running from it, you're teaching your brain something new. You're teaching your brain that you actually can handle it, that that situation isn't dangerous at all. So the goal isn't here to eliminate all anxiety. It's really to stop letting anxiety make all the decisions for you.